Welcome to Congress in Context, your deep dive into what's really happening in Washington, D.C.
Glad to be here.
So today, we're really zeroing in on just 2 days, October 1st and 2nd, 2025, a critical 48 hours.
Absolutely critical, because this wasn't just talk. This is when the government actually shut down.
Right, and we've got the source material, the actual records, to show how it all unfolded. It gives you this raw look at the high-stakes game being played.
That's right. And what's really striking for you, the listener, is the contrast. You had the House of Representatives completely dark, right? Not even in session.
Yeah, no business that.
But the Senate, it was buzzing, locked in this really intense, contentious battle.
So our mission today is kind of peel back the layers beyond just saying gridlock.
Exactly. We want to get into the two competing ideas, the two core approaches that really caused this shutdown. Was it about passing a clean funding bill, just keep the lights on? Or was it about using this deadline, this funding fight, to force everyone to deal with a huge policy crisis that was about to hit, like right now?
Okay, let's break down that showdown. It all revolves around appropriations, obviously funding the government. But it turned pretty quickly into a fight over, well, big things. Healthcare policy and this figure of $1.5 trillion in spending.
Yeah, that number kept coming up.
So let's look at the votes, the actual procedural moves that, officially started the shutdown.
Okay, so the Senate floor was busy, mostly busy rejecting things on October 1st. First up was the Democrat priorities package. That's S-2882.
Right, the continuing appropriations bill, but with their policy goals baked in.
Exactly. And the motion, just to proceed to that bill, just to start debating it, it failed cloture.
Failed cloture, meaning they couldn't even get the 60 votes needed to formally discuss it.
Correct. Didn't even get to a simple majority debate stage.
And the vote count there, that tells the story too, doesn't it? 47 yes, 53 no, roll call 5 through 6.
Yeah, short of the 60 needed. So then the Republicans brought up their alternative. This was H.R. 53701.
The one the House had already passed, the so-called clean CR.
Right. Clean meaning basically keep funding going for about 7 weeks until November 21st without major policy changes attached.
And how did that one do?
That also failed cloture. Roll call 537. But the numbers were different.
Okay.
It got 55 yes votes and 45 no votes. Still short of 60, but closer.
So 55 votes. That suggests, what, more unity on the Republican side, plus maybe some Democrats crossing over for a short-term fix?
That's likely the read, yeah. Significant Republican unity, maybe some moderates saying, let's just keep the government open for now. But critically, 45 senators held firm.
45 no votes, enough to block it.
Enough to maintain the filibuster, yeah. It showed the Democrats were largely unified in not taking that clean path until their healthcare policy demands were addressed. Neither side blinked.
Wow. So both options rejected. Government shuts down. But the leaders, Schumer on the Dem side, soon for the GOP, they immediately filed motions to reconsider those votes.
Right. Standard procedure, but it signals we're not done yet. It basically teed up another potential round of votes, likely for Friday, October 3rd, which is today as we record this.
Okay, so amidst all this budget chaos, did anything else actually get done?
Surprisingly, yes. One significant piece of non-appropriations business squeaked through. The Senate confirmed Hung Kao of Virginia.
Oh, right, to be Undersecretary of the Navy.
Yep. That vote was 52 to 45. Roll call 539. So it shows even in a shutdown, some things, especially nominations seen as critical, can sometimes find a path.
But the gridlock definitely caused collateral damage elsewhere, right?
Yep.
Appropriations weren't the only victim.
Oh, absolutely. First, there's the huge defense bill, the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act for FY 2026. That's S-2296.
Still stuck.
Still stuck. Just sitting there in resumed consideration, big amendments pending, like the main Wicker-Reed substitute, all that critical defense policy work on hold.
And there was another casualty, something maybe less high profile, but still really important.
Yeah, and this one really shows how fragile things can get. A key cybersecurity measure, the CISA reauthorization, S-1377. It just expired.
Expired. Why? Lack of votes.
Nope. A single objection. One senator objected, and that was enough to kill it, even though there were calls for a 10-year extension. Lots of bipartisan support, apparently.
One objection tanks a major cybersecurity bill. Wow.
Yeah, Senator Peters was pretty blunt about it. He basically said every hour CISA is down is like an open invitation to cybercriminals and hostile actors. That's a real immediate national security cost tied directly to this funding fight.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've seen what happened, the votes. Let's talk about the why, the political messaging, the narratives being built around who's responsible.
Right, the blame game. And the sources show two totally distinct clashing narratives. It's fascinating how clearly the lines were drawn.
So narrative one.
Republicans are pushing hard on this being the Schumer shutdown. Their argument is, look, we offered a clean, nonpartisan funding bill, the one the House passed.
HR Fee 371 again.
Right. And they say Democrats are deliberately blocking that because they're demanding $1.5 trillion in what the GOP terms partisan spending and policy writers. You heard this from Thune, Barrasso, Grassley.
And they pointed to history, too, didn't they? Saying Democrats voted for clean CRs before.
Yeah, they cited 13 times under the Biden administration where Democrats supposedly voted for clean continuing resolutions, basically arguing, why is this time different?
Okay, so that's the Republican frame.
Okay.
What about the Democrats?
Completely different story. They're calling it Donald Trump's government shutdown.
Okay.
Their argument is that Republicans are the ones refusing to act, specifically refusing to protect American health care. They accuse the GOP of wanting to inflict, quote, irreversible pain on families.
And they pointed to the House being out of session.
Exactly. Schumer, Warren, Murray all highlighted that Speaker Johnson didn't even have the House working during these first two critical days. They frame that as proof the GOP isn't actually serious about finding a solution.
So let's connect that to the core issue driving the Democrats' urgency. You mentioned health care. What specifically is the problem they feel has to be fixed right now?
Okay, this is key. The immediate burning issue isn't just general government funding levels. It's the expiration of the ACA premium tax credits, the subsidies that help people afford insurance under the Affordable Care Act.
And how did that get tangled up in the shutdown? Democrats say it was triggered by?
They point to two things. First, the Republican Budget Reconciliation Act that passed back in June 2025. And second, they cite what they call subsequent unilateral punitive actions by the administration, like pulling $400 million from the VA Department of Health.
So they're saying one policy move forced a crisis in another area.
That's the argument, that these earlier actions created this healthcare cliff, and now the funding deadline is the moment it hits.
And the impact isn't small potatoes, right? They were citing some pretty alarming numbers.
Very alarming. Both Schumer and Senator Cantwell lean heavily on a Kaiser Family Foundation report. You probably saw the headlines.
The $1,000 figure.
Yeah. It projects the average American family could see their health insurance premiums jump by $1,000 a month. That's a 114% increase on average.
Wow. Per month.
Per month. So Democrats are saying this isn't some abstract policy debate for later. This is happening now. People are getting notices about these massive premium hikes right as open enrollment is starting. It's immediate financial pain.
And Schumer directly pushed back on the idea this was about funding health care for undocumented immigrants.
Oh, very forcefully. He called that claim a damn lie. He stressed repeatedly that by law, undocumented individuals cannot receive these ACA premium tax credits. He made it clear the fight is about subsidies for legal American citizens and families.
Okay. And while healthcare was the main event, there were other economic pressures being highlighted too, weren't there? Senator Grassley brought up agriculture.
Yeah, that was an interesting parallel point. He painted a picture of economic damage hitting the Farm Belt simultaneously. He talked about high input costs for farmers, linking them to tariffs on imported fertilizer.
That's 8 issues.
Right. He noted that China hadn't bought any U.S. soybeans this entire year, which he said was costing farmers about $2 a bushel. And he put the blame for that on the current administration, saying they failed to enforce a 2019 agricultural purchase deal made under Trump.
So connecting the dots.
Yep.
Economic pain points hitting both urban and suburban families with healthcare costs and rural communities with farming income, all converging around this shutdown.
Exactly. It broadens the scope of the consequences.
Let's talk more about those consequences. So for people listening, Senator Kaine used a pretty vivid analogy for the healthcare impact in his state, Virginia.
He did. He called it a 5-layer cake of consequences. It's a powerful way to make these policy impacts feel, well, real.
Layer 1.
Direct loss of coverage. He estimated 330,000 Virginians would lose their health insurance. Just gone.
Okay. Layer 2.
The premium shock we just talked about, he cited costs jumping over 20% just in Virginia.
Layer 3 gets into the providers, right?
Yeah, healthcare infrastructure damage. Kaine specifically mentions 6 rural hospitals in Virginia and 3 primary care clinics that were at risk of closing their doors because of the funding instability and potential loss of insured patients.
And the last 2 layers are the ripple effects.
Right. Socioeconomic fallout. Layer 4 is job losses for the frontline healthcare workers in those clinics and hospitals. And layer 5, the long-term hit, losing future economic development.
Because businesses won't move to places without decent health care.
Exactly. Especially hits hard in those rural areas that are already struggling. It becomes a downward spiral.
Meanwhile, there's another ticking clock, another crisis point tied to the shutdown timing. Senator Tillis flagged this one.
Yeah, disaster relief, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
What's the issue there?
The main pot of money, the disaster relief fund, is dangerously low. He said it was down to about $1.4 billion.
$1.4 billion. That sounds like not much considering.
Especially not when you consider it was $7.5 billion just last month. And this is happening while communities are still reeling from huge disasters like Hurricane Helene.
Which hit his state, North Carolina, particularly hard.
Incredibly hard. He cited $59.6 billion in damages just for North Carolina from that one storm. And people are still recovering, needing that FEMA support.
And the kicker is, the funding for FEMA was in one of those bills, wasn't it?
That's the tragic irony, yeah. The House passed Clean CR, H.R. 5371, the one that failed cloture. It had $22.5 billion earmarked specifically for that FEMA disaster relief fund.
So the money is there, approved by the House, desperately needed, but completely locked up because of the shutdown fight.
Precisely. Inaccessible, while disaster survivors wait.
Looking ahead, did we hear anything about what it might take to break the impasse, beyond just voting again? Any conditions being set?
Senator Kaine, again, was quite direct about this. He basically laid down a marker for any future negotiations, especially around short-term funding patches.
What do you say?
He said Democrats need a solid commitment and assurance from the White House that they won't engage in what he called unilateral punitive actions during any temporary funding period.
Meaning? Like what kind of actions?
Things like firing federal employees arbitrarily or trying to claw back money that Congress had already appropriated for specific programs. His bottom line was, essentially, a deal is a deal.
Implying trust needs to be rebuilt before they can even agree to kick the can down the road with a short-term CR.
That seems to be the message, yes.
Right.
Reestablishing some ground rules for how these funding periods operate.
Okay, so what happens next? What should we be watching for today, Friday, October 3rd?
Well, the big event scheduled is in the Senate at 1:30 p.m. They're set to resume consideration of nominations, but crucially, they're also expected to hold those reconsidered votes on the two competing appropriations bills.
S-2882, the Democrat package, and H.R. 5371, the House Clean CR.
Exactly. That's the immediate focus. Will anything change from the votes earlier this week?
And assuming they eventually figure out the funding, where does Congress pivot next? What's on the agenda for the coming week?
The committee schedules give us a clue. Once the shutdown pressure is off, assuming it gets resolved, you'll see focus shift. For instance, Judiciary has oversight of the Department of Justice planned for October 7th.
Okay.
Armed Services has nominations, but also a briefing on global threats lined up for the 7th. And Commerce Committee is planning a hearing on October 8th about, quote, big tech and silencing Americans.
So plenty of their business waiting in the wings.
Definitely. The appropriations fight pauses everything else, but the legislative agenda is still packed.
So for you listening, if you want to follow this roller coaster, we really encourage you to track the specific bills we've been talking about.
Yeah, the two CRs, S-282 and H.R. 5371, are central to the shutdown itself. And S-2296, the NDAA, that's the big defense bill, caught in the crossfire.
And if these specific policy issues driving the fight, the healthcare premiums, the rural hospitals, the FEMA funding, if those resonate with you or affect you,
then reach out to your representatives. Let them know. Are you facing that $1,000 a month premium spike? Are you worried about your local clinic closing? Is your community waiting on FEMA aid?
Your voice really does matter in letting them know the real-world cost of this gridlock. It influences the pressure they feel to find a resolution.
Absolutely. And what this deep dive really highlights, I think, is this fundamental clash in approaches. It's quite profound.
How so?
You've got one side saying, essentially, let's just keep the government funded at current levels, keep things stable, and we can debate these big policy changes later through the normal process.
The clean CR approach.
Right. And the other side is saying, no, there's a massive policy crisis hitting Americans right now, healthcare costs, and this funding deadline is the leverage point, maybe the only leverage point, to force an immediate solution before millions get hurt.
Using the deadline to force the policy fight. Two very different philosophies of governing right there.
Starkly different.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. Something building on Senator Kaine's point about the shutdown's logic.
Yeah, it's quite provocative when you think about it. Federal employees are guaranteed to get back pay for the time they're furloughed during a shutdown. Congress always approves it afterwards.
Right. They eventually get paid for the time they weren't allowed to work.
So Kane's point is, shutting down the government is actually fiscally irresponsible, maybe even foolish. Taxpayers end up paying those salaries anyway.
But without receiving any of the services those employees normally provide during the shutdown period.
Exactly. You pay the cost, but you get none of the benefit. So the real cost isn't just lost productivity, which is huge. It's also the deliberate delay, the self-inflicted wound, stopping action on urgent crises like shoring up that FEMA fund or preventing those massive healthcare premium hikes from hitting families. It's a cost borne by the public, not just the politicians.
A powerful point to consider. That brings us to the end of this deep dive on Congress in context.
Thanks for tuning in.